If you're anything like me, you probably really love music. You probably love going to concerts. You probably love following all your favorite bands on social media. And sometimes you'll see that a local photographer at the concert took a photo and they reposted it, or maybe a video clip, and you wonder, if I ever got an opportunity to do that, how would I go about that? Well, over the last 2 years, I have had the opportunity to work with some bands, to shoot some content for some smaller music festivals. And I feel like I've learned a lot of really good tips on how to kind of walk through shooting live music, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. Now, I don't claim to be the foremost expert about this. There's other people that have been doing this a lot longer than I have and are probably a lot better at it than I am. But these are just some tips I've learned over the last few years of doing this that have really helped me progress and become a better filmmaker, specifically in this area. A lot of these tips, I think, apply to events in general, not just specifically music related content. A few of them are kind of specifically for like capturing a live music event, but most of these, I think, for pretty much any kind of event that you do are applicable in some way, shape, or form. So the very first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you familiarize yourself with the artist, especially if it's an artist you don't really know that well. You want to take some time to really dig into their discography. You want to go into the concert already kind of having an idea of what song you want to use. Typically, this is going to be either their most recent single, it's going to be their most popular song, or their most dynamic song. Specifically with the most recent single, what's really helpful with that, especially if it's within the first few weeks of that single being released, it's a really, really good way to help the band promote that newest single by using that for the edit. Another great thing about this is that you can actually tag your video to the song on social media like Instagram Reels, like TikTok, which is good for the algorithm. So, obviously you go in, you just make sure you bring in the added volume all the way down. You make sure your original video volume is all the way up. And, within a few minutes, once it kind of finishes processing, your video should be added to the profile or the page for that song on that social media account. And as it gets more popular, it'll be one of the first videos listed under that sound. All that really boring algorithm stuff that people don't really like to really dive into, but it is something to keep note of. You've taken the time to familiarize yourself with the discography. The next thing you want to do is when you get to the venue, you always want to make sure you arrive early. Try and get there at least an hour before the show starts, so that way you can kind of, especially if it's an artist you don't know, you can meet the point of contact. Make sure you take your time to get your pass or your wristband, whatever it is. Want to make sure you give yourself time to figure out the dynamics of what's going to be happening at the venue. Also find a place for you to set up your camera, things like that. Once the show starts, I don't want to have to go back and forth to my bag for things. So I want to make sure I have everything I'm going to need readily available. The biggest thing I would suggest for you is to look into tactical gear. This is stuff that's really big in the firearm or military community. So one of the things I have is this thing right here. I have this chest rig. So this just straps to my chest like this. Tons of pockets, and technically I think it's made for like a pistol, because there's like, if I open it up here, there's like it's like a magazine holder with a strap, but it works great for what I use it for. So in here, I'll have spare batteries, I'll have a lens cloth. Typically, I'm shooting on one lens primarily. So like, for instance, I have a Rokinon 24mm Cine lens that I shoot a lot of stuff on. And then I'll usually have the Helios 442 in here in case I want to switch to that. They have very different looks. Kind of what I use, a chest rig. There's other options out there as well. But for me, that's kind of the best option. It also kind of gives me like a nice little base in case I want to get my camera really, really close and really focus on racking focus. It gives me a nice base to kind of rest it on, so it's not just digging into my chest directly. And typically that'll get me through every single set, and then maybe between sets, between bands, I'll go back to my bag, maybe swap out my battery if I had to go ahead and do a hot swap in the moment, or just set everything down for a rest, maybe grab anything else I need. But you want to try and have everything you're going to need readily available, because once the set starts, you don't want to have to rummage back and forth, because you want to make sure you're there in the moment for the entirety of the set. So once the set actually starts and you're ready to start shooting the content, I would suggest always shooting 60 frames per second. There's a few reasons for this. Number one, it gives you the most flexibility. So if you want to do slow-mo, you want to do speed ramping, you just bring it into a 24 timeline, you slap 40% on it, or you do your little keyframes and you do your speed ramping, whatever. But it gives you the flexibility so that way you can have a much more dynamic edit. As well as the fact that when it plays in normal speed, it can add a little extra janky feeling, an extra little intensity feeling, because you have all these extra frames that, for my purposes, it usually works like really well, you know, to have that extra kind of intensity there. But I also work with a lot of like bands in like the metal and hardcore space, so may not be appropriate for every single genre of music, but for my purposes, it usually works fine. Obviously, if you're recording the whole set, you know, shoot 24, shoot 30, whatever. And I would only use 120 or 240 frames per second or higher slow-mo rates for very specific moments. So I'll give you an example. When I went on tour, one of the bands, the Undertaking, there was this moment during the last song where the vocalist would get everybody getting really close and he would jump on top of the crowd while performing the final bit of the song. I didn't really have an opportunity to do this, but going back, I might have tried to shoot it in like a really, really, really high frame rate at least once or twice just to get a really super epic slow-mo shot of it. But, you know, typically 60 frames per second is going to be your best friend when shooting music content. Next tip is to record longer. I usually will record for a minute, 2 minutes maybe, and it's all about finding the little moments. So I like to float around and, you know, I'll record, you know, the guitarist for 10 seconds or so, and then I'll, you know, move over here, record this and record this, and all usually all in the same clip. And what I like to do is I kind of like to find a spot, hit record, get a couple different shots from that angle, then, you know, stop the recording after a minute or two, reset my position. The thing is, you want to try and get as many usable bits of footage as you can when you're in a particular position. Especially most venues, you're only going to have maybe 2 or 3 different spots you can get really good shots of the band. So it really helps to kind of try and float around and get as much as you can. The next tip is get close. Little caveat here, I've mostly worked with either my friends or smaller music festivals and venues that aren't as picky about this kind of stuff. If you're working with a really, really big band, I really can't say what it would be like. But in my experience, I haven't had any issues with this, but you want to get close. You want to be confident. One of the biggest things I've had to overcome, especially as a bigger guy, I'm tall and kind of heavier set, I take up a lot of space. And one of the things I'm always aware of is I don't really want to like block anyone's view. But what I've found is that when you're there with your camera, people kind of understand for the most part that you're there working, you're there capturing the event. And so people usually work with you. There's been a lot of moments where I've kind of walked up and I've like wanted to get in front of somebody. I kind of tap them on the shoulder. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I get in front of you? They're like, oh, yeah. And most of the time, people will work with you. So you want to be confident. You want to, you know, be professional and be nice. You also want to make sure you watch your back, like especially if you're putting yourself into harm's way, so to speak. Just make sure every now and again you're kind of watching your back and trying to keep track of where everybody is. Have a really good spatial awareness. The other big thing is get crowd shots. Like, yeah, obviously the band is quote unquote the star of the show. Like you want to make sure you're getting plenty of good footage of them, but a lot of the time, one of the easiest mistakes to make is to only get shots of the band and not really worry about the crowd. But a lot of times, like what helps music content, live music content go viral, to get shared a lot, is when people see themselves in the video, when people see a crazy crowd moment, like, oh my gosh, or they see their friend or something like this. So you want to make sure you're shooting the crowd as well. And my biggest thing, and again, this is something that specifically with like heavier genres, I always say, get in the pit. Don't be afraid to get there in the action. Again, going back to watching your back, you know, and other people usually help look out for you. But, you know, I really like to try and get to the edge of the mosh pit to get those shots of people going crazy. You know, there's some shots I have of like circle pits where I'll actually get into the circle pit, or I'll push my way through the circle pit and get some shots, you know. You just want to get that craziness that's going on, because that's what people get really hyped about seeing. All right, the next tip is creating dynamic movement. So static shots are perfectly fine. You definitely need some of those static shots over the course of the set. But you also want to try and move the camera. So don't be afraid to get a little crazy, get a little silly with it. Push in, push out, rotate, twist. I always try and get some vertical clips as well. So usually I'm filming regular 16:9, but sometimes I'll just kind of flip my camera on its side just to see, so I can get like a full profile vertical shot. Because typically nowadays, when you're doing this kind of content, you do want to frame it for vertical, which typically I just shoot regular 16:9 horizontal, and then I'll just punch in and post, or there's like some other moments that I might do something different, but that's typically what I'm doing. But I'll try and get some 9:16 shots as well, just flipping my camera on its side. But yeah, don't be afraid to get a little crazy with it. I mean, I'll put some raw clips up here. You can kind of see me kind of pushing in, pushing out, doing some twists. One of my favorite things to do if someone starts really going into it, like doing a big head banging motion or something like that, I really love to move the camera with them, which is something you can do with After Effects. You can like lock onto them and have the camera move with them, but I just try and do it in camera, and sometimes I nail it and it looks really cool, and other times not so much, but it is what it is. But that's one of the other things I really heavily suggest is really try and move the camera. Like it's, you want to get those static shots and establishing shots, but otherwise, you want to try and get in there, because all of this is going to help you in the edit. Like it's going to help you have interesting points to cut and to merge clips together and all that good stuff. You want to find those little moments, but don't fret missing them. Honestly, sometimes I feel like as soon as I put my camera down, the coolest thing that happened the whole time happens. And it can be really, really easy to beat yourself up, to get annoyed, to get aggravated. It's not on you. Like, things happen. It's live. You got to remember that while you are there to capture the event, it's also, especially when it's a band that you love, that you really enjoy their music, sometimes you just got to remember to live a little bit in the moment as well. Now, the flip side of that is that the goal of the content, it's all about creating FOMO. Right? Fear of missing out. The number one thing you want to do is you want to make every single show feel like the most hype thing in the world. I'll give you an example. Some of the shows that we played when I went on tour with my friends in Meadows and the Undertaking, I'm going to be honest with you guys, there's like 5 people there at most. And yet, when I went into the edit, I don't want people to know that. So I'm still trying to make it feel dynamic, make it feel high energy, make it feel crazy. That's kind of the whole idea. You want to give people that feeling like, man, I should have been there. That brings me to my last tip, which is have fun. Like, this is the most important thing. Like, you're out here, you get to shoot really cool bands doing really cool things, or really cool artists doing really cool things, especially if you're friends with the bands or with the artists. Like, it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about having fun. One of my favorite things about being able to work with my friends in Meadows, or going on tour with them, is I get to watch my friends do the thing that they're most passionate about, while I'm also able to do the thing I'm most passionate about, which is, for them, it's playing music, and for me, it's making videos and making content. And this is what I love. This is what I honestly feel like I was put on earth to do. I can't help but sit back and reflect and just think about the fact that, like, I really get to watch my friends go out there and play their hearts out every night, and I'm just here along for the ride. And I'm just here to be able to kind of help show people how cool they are and how passionate they are about their music, and I get to be a small part of that. Yeah, that's some of the things I've learned over the last 2-3 years at this point of doing music content. One of the things I'd really love, if you guys like this video, obviously leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But specifically, I'm going to put in the description a link to the documentary that I shot for my friends. It's my first time doing an actual full-on documentary. There was no plan. It was very run and gun. It all came together in the edit, and I'm pretty proud of what I was able to put together. We really love, we're coming up on a year of that project being out. I'd really love to boost those views some more, get over 1,000 views on it. I'd really like to make more content for this channel soon. I have another video I'm going to be doing soon for one of my other channels, and just excited to try and start making content again. So we'll see. I don't know. But I hope you guys liked the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.